The truth about protein they never told you. Most people assume government nutrition guidelines exist to help them thrive. But when it comes to protein, the truth is far stranger and far more damaging than most people ever realize. The protein RDA, a mere 0.8 grams per kilogram per day, is not an optimal intake. It is the bare minimum required to avoid clinical deficiency in sedentary adults. That's it. Not performance, not healthy aging, not fat loss, not muscle maintenance, just don't fall apart. Yet millions of people treat the RDA number as a target, as if eating that little protein will help them remain strong, energetic, or lean. It won't. In fact, for most people, it does the opposite. One quick thing before we start. You've probably seen the recent headlines about doctors recommending that more men consider testosterone replacement. That raises an important question. Is low testosterone always a hormone problem? Or is it sometimes a nutrition and training problem first? We'll come back to that. Throughout this series, we're going to dismantle the myths, reveal the real science, and expose the forces, social, political, ideological, and even international, that benefit from keeping you weak, underfed, and confused about your protein needs. But today, our foundation is the RDA itself. The protein RDA came from a method called nitrogen balance. It sounds scientific, it sounds rigorous, but nitrogen balance systematically underestimates human protein needs. Why? Because it only measures nitrogen entering and exiting the body through urine and feces. It ignores nitrogen loss through sweat, skin, hair, nails, and slow muscle breakdown. It assumes short-term balance equals long-term adequacy. That assumption is wrong. Nitrogen balance is like checking your bank account for one day and declaring your financial future secure. You might show positive cash flow while still draining your savings month after month. That's exactly how people lose muscle over time, even when they appear in balance. The studies used to set the RDA were small, outdated, and based on sedentary people. No athletes, no dieters, no older adults, no stressed populations, no one who resembles the average modern human. Physical activity increases protein needs, caloric deficit increases protein needs, illness increases protein needs, aging dramatically increases protein needs. Yet the RDA ignores all of this. It treats a 20-year-old active man the same as a 70-year-old sedentary woman. It treats a dieting athlete the same as someone lying on the couch all day. Does that make any sense? Of course not. But the RDA persisted because institutions don't like updating numbers that the public already recognizes. In future episodes, we'll look at why scientific committees resisted changing the RDA for decades, even after more accurate methods emerged. Newer research using the indicator, amino acid oxidation method shows that real protein requirements are far higher. Instead of 0.8 grams per kilogram, most adults thrive at 1.2 to 2.2 grams per kilogram per day. That's double or even triple the RDA. And here's something most people never hear. Protein itself is anabolic. Eating high-quality protein triggers muscle protein synthesis, even without exercise. Resistance training amplifies the effect, but the signal begins with the protein itself. Protein doesn't just feed muscle. It instructs your body to repair tissue, maintain lean mass, control appetite, and increase metabolic efficiency. Yet none of this appears in the RDA. We'll explore this anabolic signaling process in depth in an upcoming episode, where we break down leucine thresholds, mTOR activation, and why so many Americans fail to hit even the minimum dose per meal. Millions of people, especially women, unknowingly undereat protein. They struggle with stubborn fat, low energy, poor recovery, and chronic hunger. They assume this is normal aging or slow metabolism, but the truth is simpler. They've been told to eat too little protein. And for women, the consequences after menopause become severe. Muscle loss accelerates, strength declines faster, bone density drops, appetite regulation worsens. In an upcoming episode, we'll expose why older women are one of the groups most harmed by the low-protein myth, and who benefits from keeping them misinformed. But for now, understand this. The RDA is not helping people age well. It is keeping them weak. Now we step into more controversial territory. the part few people want to talk about. Some environmental activists openly advocate for lowering protein consumption, regardless of human health outcomes. Certain groups support messaging that intentionally understates protein needs because higher protein diets, especially higher animal protein diets, don't fit their political goals. Meanwhile, ideological movements concerned with toxic masculinity often push anti-strength narratives. They oppose cultural messages that encourage men to build muscle or become physically resilient. Strength becomes framed as regressive or threatening, rather than healthy. In upcoming videos, we're going to examine these cultural pressures more carefully. Not to inflame controversy, but to understand how health, politics, and identity have all become tangled in one simple nutrient. Then there's the influencer problem. Steroid-using fitness influencers normalize extreme protein intakes that natural steroid-free people can't utilize the same way. This creates confusion. Some people think ultra-high protein is required, while others dismiss all high-protein recommendations as bro science. In reality, both extremes mislead the public. We will cover this entire phenomenon, including the anabolic differences between natural lifters and enhanced lifters, in a future episode titled, "The Steroid Effect? Why Their Protein Numbers Don't Apply to You." Another angle we'll explore in depth later. Anti-protein factions sometimes use fear to push their message. Headlines warn about toxic protein powders, dangerous whey, or protein harming your kidneys. But when you peel back the research behind these headlines, many of them are misleading, poorly contextualized, or flat out wrong. Take protein powder contamination stories. Without context, they sound terrifying. But when you examine the actual data, including what testing standards mean, what detectable levels imply, and how they compare to everyday exposures, the fear collapses. We'll break down those headlines in detail in our upcoming investigative episode on protein powder safety. Across dozens of studies, the same pattern emerges. Protein intakes well above the RDA improve strength, fat loss, muscle retention, metabolic health, and aging outcomes. For active adults, 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram maximizes benefits. Older adults require even more to combat anabolic resistance. And the kidney myth? Completely unsupported for healthy individuals. High-protein diets do not damage healthy kidneys. This has been tested repeatedly, yet the myth survives because it sounds scary and simple. In a future episode, we'll dissect exactly where the myth came from. So why does the RDA remain unchanged? Inertia, politics, consensus processes, and the difficulty of revising public-facing guidelines all contribute. Institutions avoid revising numbers that the public recognizes because it risks undermining perceived stability. And acknowledging the RDA is too low would require admitting that millions of people were given poor guidance for decades. In later episodes, we'll explore how policy committees work, why changing guidelines is nearly impossible, and who sits on the advisory boards making these decisions. We also have to talk about the cultural narrative surrounding strength. In some circles, building muscle is framed as shallow, vain, or even politically suspect. That narrative harms both men and women, especially because muscle mass is one of the strongest predictors of long-term health. Foreign actors have even exploited these narratives online, encouraging weakness, discouraging fitness, and mocking strength culture in ways that slowly influence public opinion. Later in this series, we'll break down how misinformation campaigns hijack legitimate social issues to discourage people from becoming physically resilient. Here's the biological truth. Muscle protects you. It supports metabolic health, regulates glucose, supports joint stability, prevents falls, improves cognitive function, and extends lifespan. Yet adults over 30 lose muscle every decade unless they actively fight it. Undereating protein accelerates this decline. Later in this series, we'll deep dive into how much muscle the average adult loses per decade, and how easily it could be prevented with sufficient protein and basic resistance training. When people try to hit reasonable protein targets, two things usually happen. They underestimate portion sizes, and they rely on low-protein, high-calorie foods that leave them hungry again soon after. Ultra-processed food environments worsen this effect. One of our upcoming episodes will show you how to structure simple, high-protein meals without spending more money, eating more calories, or living in the gym. Let's be clear, the RDA is not a recommendation for thriving. It is the lowest intake needed to avoid falling apart. If you want to maintain muscle, regulate appetite, support metabolic health, age well, or perform at a high level, you need more protein than the RDA provides. Much more. In this series, we will uncover how nitrogen balance misled nutrition science, how modern methods reveal real protein needs, why women, especially postmenopausal women, suffer most when protein is low, how climate narratives suppress accurate protein information, how steroid users distort what normal protein intake looks like, why protein powders are far safer than headlines imply, how ideological movements weaponize weakness, how foreign actors promote anti-strength messaging, how to calculate your actual protein needs, and how you can build muscle, lose fat, and stay strong as you age. Your body deserves more than minimums. The RDA is the floor, not the goal. If you rely on it, you will undereat protein, you will lose muscle, you will age faster than necessary, and you will feel worse than you need to. Modern science is clear. Optimal protein intake is far higher. The evidence is overwhelming, the benefits are tangible, and the only question now is whether you want to follow outdated guidelines designed to prevent deficiency, or embrace the knowledge that allows you to thrive. In the next episode, we're going to connect that directly to testosterone. Why lifting weights and eating enough protein aren't just about muscle, they're about hormone production, and why some men are being told they need testosterone replacement before they've ever fixed the basics. That's next. The truth is coming, and it's going to change the way you eat forever.